All the Things You Are is one of those classic jazz songs. Anyone from an intermediate player all the way up to a superstar knows the chords and the melody and may have recorded a version of it themselves. It's also one of the songs closely associated with beginner jazz musicians, and in my humble opinion, it's terrible at that. Here's why I believe that All the Things You Are is an awful song to teach people how to play jazz.
You are the brightest kiss of springtime that makes the lonely winter seem long. You are the breathless hush of evening that trembles on the brink of a lovely song.
Now, to be clear, All the Things You Are is a great song, like really good. It was written by Jerome Kern and Oscar Hammerstein in 1939 for the musical Very Warm for May. And the lyrics are honestly beautiful, as the ham daddy was wont to write. The saxophonist Charlie Parker apparently had a nickname for the song based on the lyrics. You Are the Angel Glow are the first lyrics in the B section. Bird would apparently call the song Yatag, You Are the Angel Glow. Speaking of Charlie Parker, he also popularized the introduction for the song that you'll hear on, I don't know, maybe 50% of all performances of the tune. It's also potentially partly written by Igor Stravinsky, but I have a whole video on that, link in the description. The song is really resilient. Despite being written in World War II and being 80 years old now, it's played at every level of jazz, including the very beginner level, and I think that's a mistake. A beginner jazz song, I think, should be harmonically relatively simple. A starting diet of giant steps is a recipe for disaster. But it should also be, wherever possible, vaguely familiar, because then they can introduce the jazz slowly, tiny little steps. Now, of all the things that All the Things You Are is, All the Things You Are is not simple. A lot of jazz standards have an AABA form, and all of the A's in those cases are typically virtually identical. Now, All the Things You Are also has an AAB form, but all of the A's are in different keys. And then the last one has 4 extra bars. So instead of being an 8-bar A section, it's a 12-bar A section. The first A section is in A flat major, and the chords are relatively simple for jazz. F minor 7, B flat minor 7, E flat dominant 7, A flat major 7, D flat major 7. We're in Autumn Leaves territory here. This is all diatonic to the key and fairly basic for a beginner jazz musician. But then we modulate to a different key, C major, for just a couple of bars, with a D minor 7, G dominant 7, and a C major 7. Now, just for fun, we're going to move to E flat major with a C minor 7, F minor 7, B flat dominant 7, E flat major 7, and A flat major 7. This is virtually identical to the chords in the first 5 bars, but it's in a completely different key. And then we're going to modulate again, this time into G major with an A minor 7, D dominant 7, and a G major 7. Heading into the B section, we get to stay in G major, thankfully, with another A minor 7, D 7, and a G major 7, although twice as long as we just played them. The second half of the B section is unfortunately not so gracious to us. We have a minor 2-5-1 into E, but where the E is a major 7 chord. And then immediately, we're going to modulate back into A flat major for the final A section. The first 5 bars of the final A section are identical to the first 5 bars of the tune, but for bars 5 through 8, we get a series of chords that descend chromatically, which is a little bit odd and sort of steps outside of that A flat major key center. And then finally, in the last 4 bars, we get our final trip home with a cadence back down to the A flat major 7. In summary, we've got a song that is an AAB form, but it's 36 bars instead of 32, and every A section changes key. Now that's not a problem for someone who's played jazz for a little while, but it's a pretty tall order for a beginner. So what are some songs that are better for beginners to jazz? The obvious one is Blue Bossa. It's a bossa, so it's played to straight 8s, which is a little more familiar to most people, and it's got like 8 chords total. So it's super, super simple. Autumn Leaves is the other one that everyone talks about, and again, got like 8 chords, they're all in the same key, and it's a good introduction to the more traditional jazz sound. On top of that, any of the simple jazz bluesers, assuming you grew up in sort of the Western European musical tradition, you've almost certainly heard a 12-bar blues, and so it's a very familiar way to get into a sort of part of the jazz vocabulary. Another class of song that I think gets slept on a little bit with jazz beginners is R&B jazz crossovers. So songs like Summertime, Sunny, which is an awesome song on its own, but perfect for people who are just getting into jazz and like a bit of funk or a bit of groove. Anything from George Benson's Breezin' album or that period of his playing. And like songs by like Stevie Wonder. Like those songs are so easy to transfer into playing jazz vocabulary over. So really is something we should be stressing a lot more in sort of early jazz education, in my opinion. So all the things you are, yeah. What is it good for? Absolutely. Intermediate players. All the Things You Are is like a surprisingly hip tune. All of those modulations sort of give you the freedom to do some really cool stuff with it and are a great way to learn how to play in different keys. That's all stuff that you need to learn as sort of a beginner to intermediate jazz player. And so once you've learned, I don't know, a dozen tunes or more, then All the Things You Are can be a useful tune to learn. Unfortunately, in my experience, and I think the experience of a lot of other people, it gets introduced way too early. Another cool thing about All the Things You Are for intermediate players is that it's been recorded by a lot of pro musicians who are doing something different with it. Guys like Charles Mingus, Pat Metheny, and Brad Meldau have all recorded versions of the song that sort of go beyond what we expect from a medium swing jazz tune. And so All the Things You Are can become sort of a way for people to see the horizons of what's possible with the genre through a prism of a relatively familiar song. That happened for me personally. I was going to see James Muller in Sydney, Australia, when I think I must have just left high school. And right at the end of his set, he played All the Things You Are in 7. And this has been done before, and it's been done since. But it was one of those times where it was just, I got to sit there and listen to a song that I had heard 100,000 times before, done in a really cool way. That's a really valuable thing, but it's not something that I'm going to be showing someone who's only just licked Stairway to Heaven and now wants to play bebop. Actually, that'd be pretty cool. Thank you for watching. I don't think this is a particularly hot take, but feel free to disagree or leave your discussions in the comments. The argument against All the Things You Are would be something along the lines of it pushes talented students to work harder. Maybe I just wasn't a very talented student. I mean, that's why I'm making videos about jazz as opposed to playing jazz. Ooh, that got real. This is the last video I'll be doing from this couch, as we're about to pull it apart and sell it, and then move from Toronto, Canada, where I've been living, to Sydney, Australia. So say goodbye to the couch. If you'd like to like and subscribe, please do. And if you'd like to see more videos featuring this couch, I'll put one up here. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you next time.